In Gauntlet Task 1, you're going to be using Data Studio to measure the velocity and acceleration of carts. So I'm going to give a demonstration of how this is actually done. So when you first start Data Studio, you're going to get this main menu. I'm going to click Create Experiment. And a position versus time graph shows up because I have a motion sensor already plugged in. If you don't get this position versus time graph, it's because the motion sensor is not plugged in. So I'm going to go ahead and put a cart on an incline. And I'm going to click Start here. Start button to start collecting data. So I'll let the cart start, have the cart accelerate, and I get some data there. And one of the first buttons you're going to use is this first button at the top, which is zoom or scale to fit. So I get a parabolic type graph. I'm going to go ahead and try it again. Now these data points are kind of spaced far apart, so you may not get as much data as you like. You can always go into the setup and change what's called the sampling rate. So I'll go to, let's say, 50 hertz, 50 samples per second. I'll close this up and I'll try it again. Click Start. And you can see I get much more data. I get many more dots, many more samples per second. So depending on your application, you may want to increase or decrease the sampling rate. Sometimes increasing it too much gives you too much data, so there's a happy medium on what the sample rate is. You'll notice here I have two little boxes here. I have run 1 and run number 2 for the 2 runs that I just did. If I click on run 1 and press the delete button, I can actually delete it from the screen. Notice here it's still in the upper left hand corner here, so I can always drag it back to the graph to get it back. But if I want to get rid of it temporarily, I can remove it. Having one set of data per graph makes things a little bit easier to look at. If you go to run 1 and press delete and remove it from the sensor, you completely remove the data. So if you have a bad trial, you can completely get rid of a set of data. Okay, I'll leave it there for now. Right now we have position versus time data. Behind the scenes, Data Studio is actually collecting velocity and acceleration data. So if I go to Setup, that's the button here at the top, I'll click Velocity and Acceleration, and you'll notice they appear right here for both Run 1 and Run 2. Close this box up. I can actually click on, let's see, I'm working with Run number 2 here, so I'll click the orange one. If I click and drag it below this graph, you'll see that I get a velocity graph that shows up, and if I go ahead and grab the acceleration, I'll use Run 2 here, below the graph, it'll pop that in. So you get all 3 graphs that are stacked here. And they're on common time scales. If I go to the bottom time scale with the grabber tool and I move left and right, you'll see all 3 of those move in tandem. If for some reason this lock button is off, you'll see that now there are 3 time scales and I can drag them independently, which is typically not what you want to do. You want to keep them all in sync. So for some reason this is not checked, you want to make sure that's checked so that they're all locked together. One tool that you're definitely going to use is the tool to find out what the slope of a line is. Specifically in this set of data, if I find the slope of the velocity versus time graph, I can find out what the acceleration rate is. So to do that, I can highlight a set of data. Look, this looks fairly linear. I do have an outlier here. This looks fairly linear. I can click on the Fit button, and I think it's linear, so I'll click linear. It'll show me what some statistics on the line are. It tells me what it thinks is the y-intercept, which would intercept down here below the axis, and the slope. Since the slope of the velocity versus time graph is acceleration, it's saying the acceleration is about 4 meters per second squared. Okay, to kind of check that out, I'm going to move my cursor down here using the Smart tool. This is the Smart tool, and if I move it down to the data here, you can see I have a coordinate pair. This is the time, and that's the acceleration rate. It hovers, let's see, 4.7, 3.8, 3.8, 4.7, 3.8, 4.2, 4.2, 3.8. So you can see here, trying to read the acceleration directly is a bit iffy because it changes a bit. Looking at the slope of a line is a little better measure because it averages those things together. So in this region that I selected, the acceleration is about 4 meters per second squared. So that's an important tool, and again, I did that by using the Fit tool. It also works with quadratics and sinusoidal fits when we get there, but for now the linear fit is what we are going to be using. So that's a quick introduction to the use of Data Studio to collect position, velocity, and acceleration data, and to find slopes of lines. There's a lot of other tools up here we'll use as we go along, but those are the major ones at this point.